Hello, my name is Nick Bonanno. I am the producer of wrestling operations for the United Wrestling Network and the senior official of the United Wrestling Network, welcoming you to a podcast, a live podcast recording of the United Wrestling Podcast. My co-host this evening is Mr. David Marquez. David. And of course, our guest of honor is Navajo Warrior. Good to see you. How's it been?
Been great. Just trying to deal with everything that's going on in the world.
Of course. What's it? What's it called? We had EJ Sparks on a couple days ago, and there was obviously a lot still going on in the world. But is there what's going on in Arizona? I guess specifically, is there troubles in?
Let's see. Gyms are still closed. Schools started, so some schools are online only. Some schools are, in class learning. Mm-hmm. And right now we have some fires going on in the mountains close to us, and it's just, a fun time.
Sounds like the same here. We're surrounded by fires. The temperature is 106.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
for here, that's
sounds
horrible.
Good right now.
Yeah.
Well, for you, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the humidity, which we're not accustomed to. It's about 45 to almost 50% humidity for Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Breathing water. I remember there was one trip we did down to Arizona where they're like, oh, it's hot, but it'll drop a lot. It'll drop about 20 degrees at night. It's like, okay, great. Not thinking that like 115 to 95 is that really going to make that much of a difference.
Right.
And it's like sweating.
That's true.
Let's say you said the gyms have been closed, but that doesn't seem to be slowing down any of your workouts. What your Instagram is all kinds of crazy strongman stuff. What's up with that?
Yeah, so we adapted. They closed our gym, so what we're gonna do? We're gonna go do some strongman lifting, and we have a friend that has a gym in his home, and he's got weight equipment, strongman equipment, sandbags, Atlas stones. I mean, you name it, he's got it. So we just started, training there.
Impressive. It's like we have a bit of a
ambitious than us.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, we have a modest backyard gym, to say the most, I would say.
And then plus, we're doing this in 110 plus degree weather too. So it's a challenge, but it's fun.
Yeah,
insane.
Okay, yeah, we can't even get out to walk the dog at this in the heat that we're doing here. But I'd say you and David have known each other for a long time now, haven't you?
Oh yeah,
very long time.
20 years. Yeah.
How how did the both of you meet and start working together? David, if you remember.
The first time I didn't meet him in person. I think I did meet you in person, but I didn't meet you. I think it was at a WWF show, and you're doing enhancement stuff, but it was just in passing. But then when I had World Legion Wrestling in Missouri, I remember Steve's package, his talent package that arrived was probably the most professional one I had ever seen at that level. It had everything. It had the tape. It had the 8x10s. It had how to contact me. It may even have had a business card. That part I don't remember. But it was VHS. And, it was totally professional. But he was in Arizona, and then I was in Missouri. But then I think you and I even talked about this too. I didn't go on the tour, but I was supposed to go on the tour. The Bad Boys of Wrestling stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I was supposed to go on those, but I didn't. But Derek Stone did.
Okay.
I think. So anyhow, your name was always circulated around, but that's how I first got accustomed to Steve.
Yeah, so it was, at that era, pre-internet. So we were putting the VHS tapes together with the highlights and matches on it, the 8x10s printed up, and then try to get work, and there's all that networking. And it was a lot harder back then.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to, what was it, like 1999, 2000 with UPW and Rick Bassman.
That's right.
David was doing the production, the television production for it. And I would go, so the setup at the Galaxy Theater, there was a separate room on the side that David would have set up with all of his monitors and everything in there. And I would, when my match was over, or even before my match, I would walk around, go into that side and just peek in and watch, because I was so interested by how it all works. Doing the stuff in the ring is one thing, but then watching how all of the production works, in the television and everything else that goes into it it always fascinated me as well.
Did you have like an aha moment by peeking your head into the control room there, or by kind of looking through the other side of things?
I actually did, because I would watch, and I don't know how many monitors there were, but let's say, for example, there were 6. Okay, and I would watch him go, camera 1, camera 2, camera, and just going, from each part of a move that was happening in the match.
Mm-hmm.
He would know when to cut to a different camera. And so then I would see how it would look. And then that would kind of help me with, oh, okay, well, when I'm wrestling this match, I need to know where these cameras are, so that when the video comes out, or the DVD or whatever it was going to be broadcast on comes out, the match will look better. It'll look, look professional. It'll look, instead of having my back to the camera, I need to be facing the camera, and that way they can catch everything that we're doing.
The funny thing about that little room is, so the way that it was set up, there's a stage, then like a dance area or a mosh pit or whatever you would want to call it. We'd put the ring on the dance floor, and it was surrounded by showcase casino type stair step seating. But that side room was a bar that they didn't use. So it was sticky, it was tacky, and he's right. He's correct. He was paying attention. There were 6 monitors, and it was as bare as can be. And we ran cable, and we made it work somehow. But the interesting part is, there's only 2 people from back in the Galaxy UPW days that had said the exact same thing: Steve and John Cena. They were the 2 that would come and visit me often. And Cena would call me an octopus later, as he saw me. When I was younger, I would flail and say things and be really animated. I don't do that as much now. A lot of adult words. But yeah, no, those are crazy times, and of course we were all learning, and Steve was the one that caught on, and that's why when we were getting ready to do the Hollywood program, he was first on my list of people to call. And even prior to the Hollywood show, I'm not sure if it's right before or right after, but like Steve and I, we kind of created the original championship wrestling from Arizona too. In Arizona, there was another incarnation before what people see now throughout the state.
That is true. And so, yeah, it's always been it's a great working relationship with David. It's been a lot of fun.
So you were the featured, performer for the Push highlight video this week, or not a closer look into the characters of United Wrestling. And let's see. So you brought up a name, Shawn Dakota. For
Yes.
those who might not know, who is Shawn Dakota?
So when I started wrestling, I needed to come up with a name, a character, something that was gonna, grab attention. And now realize this is 1990,
Mm-hmm.
so the Vanilla Ice was a big thing back then. And when I was in high school, my wrestling coach couldn't pronounce my name. He would always call me the Iceman, or Ice, because he couldn't say Islas. He would say Icelas, or just call me Iceman. So I was like, oh, well, that's something I could do. And I could kind of like mix the 2 together, and I would actually dance in the ring and do ridiculous like Vanilla Ice type moves. And it worked, for that time. But then I needed to change it up, and I always really wanted to do the Native American character. And so I was trying to come up with names, and my trainer's first name was Steve, so I couldn't use my real first name, because then it's like you have 2 guys on the same show, the same name, that kind of thing. So I came up with Shawn Dakota, and Dakota just because it was such a broad name. And it's funny because I was talking to my wife, and said just last night, and I said, I wonder why I didn't just come up with Tommy Hawk, and the marketing of that, but Shawn Dakota, and I would call myself Thunderheart Shawn Dakota. And so that's when I started to do the character a little, and then that evolved into the Navajo Kid, and that was just basically from touring the Navajo reservations and wrestling all over the Navajo reservation. So when you would see the poster, when you see the wrestling's coming to town or coming to the reservation, and you see the Navajo Kid, it's going to draw your attention a little more than Shawn Dakota, especially on the Navajo reservation. So that's how the two kind of morphed from Shawn Dakota into the Navajo Kid.
So jumping from being a singles wrestler to forming the team, the tribe, along with Hawaiian Lion, how did that come about?
Around 2000, there was a wrestler who wrestled as Ghostwalker. He wrestles GQ Gallo now. He's still wrestling. And so when Gallo was in his training, we noticed his look. He had long hair, and a lot of people would say that, oh, you two could be brothers, that kind of thing. So it was like, well, in his part of his training, it's like, let's start working as a tag team. And I've always loved tag team wrestling, but I never really had tag team partners to work with. Although in Las Vegas in the late 90s, they had a partner for me, and it's funny because, at that time, I thought he was old, and he was 40. And now here I am, coming up closer to 50 and then still doing this. But anyway, so Gallo and I started this team called Native Blood, and we were wrestling all over. And that's how I kind of transitioned into tag team wrestling. And then when Hawaiian Lion came along, so Gallo wanted to change the character, change up his look, and do everything else. So we split the team. And the way Hawaiian Lion and I got together it's funny because I get a call from 01 Japan, and they wanted Native Blood to come back to Japan. And I said, well, we're not Native Blood anymore, so he's like, well, can we do still a Native Blood team? So that's where Hawaiian Lion came in, because he was at that point, we just gave him a mohawk, and he put the face paint on just like mine, and just like how Ghostwalker used to wear his, and we called him Shooting Wolf, and that was the name for Native Blood. They called us New Native Blood, and anytime we put new in front of something, it just doesn't seem to work the same, like the New Midnight Express or the new, But so that's when we started teaming, and then knowing that Hawaiian Lion is Hawaiian, I was like, let's just go with Hawaiian Lion and Navajo Warrior, and we're tribal. He's Hawaiian, I'm Navajo, so it's like we're natives, just not the same kind, or the same tide, same tribes. So we went with the tribe with that new name, and it's stuck ever since.
Right on. David, are you doing okay over there? Do you see you looking around?
I am. The dog is under me.
Does he have any thoughts about championship wrestling from Arizona sport?
He probably does. He probably doesn't want to hear about wrestling anymore.
No. Let's say, so when you did team with Lion, eventually that brought you to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, where you were the longest reigning Heritage Tag Team Champions.
Yes.
We ended up going against any number of characters and throughout that came through Hollywood at that time. Who were some of the teams that you, I guess, clashed with in a good way, and made some memorable moments in the ring?
The most memorable out of all, right at the top of my head, I always think of them when I think of like the best teams to wrestle with in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood was Los Bandidos with Tito Escondido and Rico. So, and then they had Jezebel as their manager, and we would have great matches with them because they were a hard-hitting team, and we like to hit hard, and it was just like a very high impact type match. And so we ran a series with them to where we even had a tag team strap match, and eventually they were the ones that took the titles. So that was the team that sticks out at the top of my, they're at the top of my list for the teams from Hollywood. And then of course there was Peter and Ray Rosas were great to work with, and it's funny because the size difference, and it just created for a good contrast, between the two teams, the two different styles and the different sizes and stuff. And but yeah, like any of the teams that we got put in there with were fun to work with. They even brought in they wrestle the Dark Order now. They were Super Smash Bros.
Smash Brothers, yeah.
Yeah, so it was fun because we would never know who we were going until we got there, and it'd be a good surprise. It was never a disappointment. You know, we're always having a good time there.
Yeah,
So a
one of
little
my
com-
favorite one of my favorite memories goes to the very first taping.
Oh,
He made a team. They made it an angle. They made a whole thing out of it on accident. So
Exactly.
of course, in our organization, the over the top rope is still a disqualification, and they were going all crazy, house of fire, this and that, and they threw both of them out of the ring. And I remember Pierce was booking the show at the time, and I just looked over to the side at Adam because I was directing the TV, and he looked at me, and I said, "I guess we have to ring the bell." And then they beat the hell out of him. And it's funny when you say the new whatever, the team name we gave them was New Hollywood, and it was Brandon Parker and Todd Chandler. And those kids, they were kind of like gluttons on our show. They just got the hell beat out of them. Percy Pringle used them as an ottoman. Like there's lots of things that happened to those kids, but it was because of Steve and Lion. They just went house of fire and just went crazy, threw them out, and then we had to disqualify them.
Yeah, it was one of those things where we didn't even think about it, and then when the bell rang and the referee said we were disqualified, that switch went off in my head. Where it's like, well, we've got to recover somehow. So we just started to beat them down and solidify ourselves as this heel, just angry team. And now we had a reason to be angry, because we get disqualified in our debut match, and this is what ends up happening.
It was so funny too. So if you get the chance to watch it and go back and see, you should see their expressions when they realize what happened.
Yeah.
I would not want to be the people on the floor, not on the other side of the ring. And in that moment, it's like, all right.
Well, the thing is, in the Galaxy, there was, like I said, the way that the ring was set up, there was room to fight on the outside, but it was elevated, and the seat started above that. So it was kind of like a hockey dasher board or something. And I just remember poor Brandon Parker. He just flew and just bam, just smacked the hell out of the way they just threw him. It was great.
Was it recently? I saw some footage from the feud between Banditos and the Tribe, mixing in with Rock Nest Monsters and PP Ray a little bit too. But seeing the two teams, yourselves and then the Banditos, seeing them 8-10 years ago, and then seeing all four of you now, I think all of you look better now and are just like way more jacked. And like, how does that happen?
It's something in the water, No, it's just we're four guys that take our craft seriously, and that's a big part of what we do, with as a professional wrestler. The wrestling's just a small part of it, there's also you looking the part and being the part. And there was a period where I was at my worst as far as physically, and I would still try to get in, still get in the ring and still wrestle matches and stuff. But then I would look back at video of it or photos from it and just be disappointed in how I look physically. And so it just lights a fire under you and makes you want to, get better. And, because of my wife, Morgan, she found, we went to the same gym as an old student of mine that I started training. And now he went away to the military, came back, and he's enormous. And so Morgan looked at me one day and after the gym and said, "You need to train with him." And I was like, no. I was afraid I was going to be So and so I went out of town for work, and I came back, and she's like, "Hey, welcome back. You're lifting with Derek tomorrow." I'm like, "I'm what?" So and then it just went from there. And then having him just push me to my limits every time we get into the gym, it's been a big help, and I feel better, feel stronger, quicker. And so it's funny because this late in my career, I feel and like I look and move better than I did 10 years ago. So it's a big part of it. It's like you never want to go out there and not be at your best. So now I'm really taking it even more seriously than I had in the past.
Very cool. So you mentioned all the in-ring work. You mentioned how looking behind the camera helped you become a better performer in the ring, in front of the camera. in taking on a couple different hats as a producer, or helping others, younger people, put their matches together for TV, how do you feel that working with United and David specifically has influenced that, and is in your head as a producer on the other side of things?
It's like having the resources, like David and yourself and the other producers, and being around them. Adam Pierce, when he was producing, and just the whole group of watching how everyone does things, and some are a little different than others, and I'm just picking things here and there and seeing what would work for me and my teaching style or my coaching style. So I would take a little bit of what David would do. I take a little bit of what Adam would say, or what someone else would say, and just kind of mold it into my own. Just like when I was wrestling, when I started wrestling, I would take a little bit from this wrestler or take a little bit from that wrestler, and then I would just kind of like ball it all together, and that's me. So it's been great because learning from guys that are really good at what they do, that's how you get better. So it's been a good influence, and a good way to help me produce the guys now when we have matches going on for Championship Wrestling from Arizona.
And something too, Nick, that he's being modest is when he first started too. He had guys like Gurria and Rene Goulet and Strongbow, and people that those influences, and maybe even Vince himself back then, actually interacting and saying things before those superstars or wrestling challenge shows or velocities or heats. And, and he still traipses around there too these days, and he gets to see how that's evolved as well. So,
but no, that is true. And the guys like Gurria and Rene Goulet and Chief, and what I would listen, and at that time it was different because I was taking direction. I was on that other end of it, to where I was the one taking direction. So, I guess it stays in the back of your mind, and then when you see how it's evolving and changing, and how everyone else is evolving with it, you kind of take still some of those old ideas and you change them up a little to make them a little more with the times now.
David, question for you. How is it when you're, bringing new producers into your programs? How is it working with making a wrestler into a producer versus, say, a TV person? What do they bring that's different?
Well, they understand what's going on in the ring. They understand everything. Like myself, I've never been in the ring in that capacity, so I don't try to pretend that I know what they do. I know the sequence. I know what needs to get there. I know what they understand, what beats we need to tell the story. But they put the dance together, and it's. I've been very fortunate to work with great people who know their job. They know their craft. So, with Steve, it was easy. With Adam, it was easy. With Yuma, it was easy. He understood it. He loved it. He had big passion for it. When you bring someone from the outside in, as an example, as much as we loved him, Joe Schmo, he was not a wrestler, but he was a writer and a producer and a big wrestling fan. So he had the knowledge and the background of how to make something happen. It's just sometimes the execution isn't there because he thought too grandiose with an idea that even the guys are like, man, that's a little too much. And then they would bring it down. And then his expectations were, well, we needed it to, like, he goes, but we eventually got there. They understood the pacing of how to get us to where non-wrestlers as producers got us. Like same thing with Angelo. When Angelo was writing the show, fine writer, he really booked the show well. But then there were times it was like, I know when the guys were going out there, they were still going through their head like, well, how do we do that? Versus a wrestler who knew exactly how to lay it out, how to do it, understand where you're at, and this is what we need.
I know. We got a question from our comment section here. Another Championship Wrestling from Arizona alumni, John Roberts, asks, "What's one of the biggest pieces of advice that you could give to the next generation of wrestlers?"
One that I like to give is always, it is one of the first things that I was told when I started, and it was 4 open, 1 closed. Keep your eyes and ears open at all times and your mouth closed. And and what that means is be a sponge, sit with, the guys that have been there and have been there longer than you and have been successful, and you will get all kinds of advice. I was lucky enough to, in my first years, to get to be in locker rooms with guys like, Superfly Jimmy Snuka and Greg Hunter and Tom Brown, and sit and learn from them, and so that I think is the biggest piece of advice I could give, because it's always going to work in your favor. You might not understand it at first, like when they tell you something the first time, but trust me, it'll get to you a little later, and a light switch goes off.
For sure. When we mentioned Adam Pearce before, this occurred to me. Have you ever been like on the wrong side of Adam Pearce? You ever, to put it, I guess, politely? I don't know. All right. There's some legendary stories.
I have not, luckily. And what's funny is all the years that I've known Adam, we've never actually wrestled against each other.
Really?
It's one of those, yeah, really. We never wrestled against each other. We've done a couple of things where we've helped, like, been on the same team, but never against each other. And it's one of those matches that I always really wanted to have. And from that group, I don't mean to try to bunch them together, but they were, when we were coming up, it was the Adam Pearce, Colt Cabana, CM Punk, Chris Hero, the guys that were from that area.
Ace Steel, Dominion.
Yeah, yes, Danny Dominion, Ace Steel. I've wrestled Danny and Ace Steel, but never Adam. And he was one that I always wanted to wrestle, because I just loved his style, and he could get heat like no one else, and especially from our generation, of guys. But
like Steve was saying about what he was saying about, like, listening to people in the locker room. He'll remember this too. So when Paul Bearer was on our program, people were kind of afraid of him, versus when we were coming in, and it was very inviting. The generation gap is real different, where I think, we were, our age group, we were encouraged to talk to older people. We were encouraged to ask questions. We were encouraged to have respect, not from the pro wrestling handshake respect, just have respect for somebody who was older than you, just period, and bring them into your world too. Because you have to remember, Percy was an outsider coming in, but it took me a long time to realize why nobody really made friends with him in almost 3 years of him being with us. It was because they played with his action figure. They watched him on major television. Some may have even had him on birthday cakes when they were children. Like, I didn't put that all into perspective. So it was like only Adam and Yuma and older, and like Steve and Lion and stuff. Those are the only people who actually talked to Moody. But if I can put on anyone, is if anyone is in our locker rooms and they've been somewhere, even if you don't think that their somewhere is big enough for your stature of being there. If someone's done a tour of Europe many times, or Mexico many times, but they haven't gone to Japan, or they may not have gone to WWE, that doesn't mean that they're nobodies.
Right.
If people really understood who the international bookers were for gaijins in some of the companies, they'd be shocked to know who they had to go through to get there. So that's one thing that I want to impress on people. It's like, always ask questions. You guys know this at the shows. I try my best to talk to everybody and try to help them, one, be less nervous, but two, like, just go talk to people. Go just make conversation.
Yeah.
And not just about wrestling, life.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. It makes a more inviting locker room, and when people are talking to each other, and it's helpful, because you see a lot of guys in the back just going over things in their head, and then they're off in their own world, and then but if they would just take the time to have a little conversation and try to pick up an idea there, or even just like David said about life, it kind of eases your nerves as well, because it's a much more relaxed feeling.
For sure. I think that David had mentioned to me before about just having conversations with people in the back. especially if I'm trying to figure out the capacities of a talent, is if you can have a conversation with someone for, say, 16 minutes or what would be 2 segments, then you know that they might be able to carry a 2-segment match. If they can't piece a couple of words together or they have nowhere to go, maybe that's something else you have to consider. So I really like that, the ideas of carrying out the conversation. And I like to ask people, like, why a lot. Like, why are you doing this? Or, why not do that? And they're like, well, we're doing this, 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 and this. Oh, okay, I didn't think of that. That makes sense. So I will certainly ask more questions, not that on top of the ones I'm asking now, but in addition to anyone who may be watching or listening to us, please don't be afraid. But let's see. So as we're getting close to winding down here, you mentioned in the push video that you don't think that you might have a last go tour, but maybe not a wrestling retirement. What do you feel when it comes to that day, 30 years plus, whatever that might be, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want your legacy going forward to be?
Wow. It's honestly, I think it's something that I've been working on from the time I started, just being a real person, being a good person. And it's really, to me, that is more important than the accolades as far as like in ring, things that I've done or places that I've gone, different countries that I've toured and wrestled in. It's just when my name gets brought up, I would always want it to just be received with something good, like, oh yeah, I really like him, or he was a good guy, or he took care of me, or things like that. I've always wanted to leave the business better than when I came into it. All of the veterans that were there.
Did I lose him?
I think we may have lost him.
All right.
Well, until he comes back, I'll help with this a little bit too.
Sure.
Is what it means, much like when I tell you guys, and even the public, all I have is my name. That's it. My handshake is my bond, and what I say to people is true. So if you can't keep that honesty in dealing with people, then it's not worth it. If that's what you can't leave, if people can't take from your honesty, and sometimes it's brutal honesty, it's just not there. So if I caught what Steve was saying, it's be honest, do your best in helping people, and your word is all you have to help make things better.
Yeah, I mean, am I still here?
He's back.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. I mean, sometimes I have a little trouble with wording how I'm feeling, but yeah, I mean, you only have one name. That is, you're one shot to make that impression and to leave that impression on the people, and like I said, just try to make the business better than when I came in.
I love that. Well, anyone who I've ever brought your name up to has always said very nice things about you. So far, at least as far as I've seen and experienced, that you are living up to what your goal is to bring goodness with your name and in the best business itself. Navajo, where can we find you online? Where's your social media?
Social media is Instagram, Navajo Warrior, the number 2, letter K, because of my 2K, job. And then that's Instagram, Twitter, Wrestling Tribe, and that's the Twitter for myself and Hawaiian Lion, and that's it. Facebook is just my Facebook. Just it's more personal with a few of my wrestling friends involved, invited to it, but it's not one of those public ones where I accept a lot of people that I don't know.
Good man.
David, how about you? Where can we find you online? What you got coming up?
Well, the one thing I'd like to do, and Steve knows nothing about this, is, as everybody knows, we have a pay-per-view starting on September 15th called Primetime Live, and I'd like to extend the invitation to the tribe to come out Tuesday, September 15th, and have a match live on pay-per-view. So if you guys could make that happen, I would enjoy having you.
Well, I know that I would love to, and I'll just talk with the Hawaiian Lion and see if we can make the date work, and we'll be there. And hopefully a team will be ready to come fight the tribe.
Well, I kind of know someone who says they want to do it, and should be pretty good.
Awesome.
So we have that going on. He's accepted it halfway. We'll keep talking about that. But at CWFH Marquez on most things, my Facebook page is public, and it can be controversial at times. So if you're a fan of wrestling, no, it's my page, David Marquez, not the wrestling personality. So politics and everything is spoken about on there, and very freely. So if you don't like that, don't come looking for me. Be a fan of the guy with the microphone and that plastic guy. But we got a lot of stuff coming up. We go into Hollywood tapings this weekend. We're working on Arizona shows again, and then of course Primetime Live with the NWA.
Awesome.
Incredible. So all these things coming up. Everyone make sure to follow you at United Wrestling on Twitter, at United Wrestling Network on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm at Nicholas Bonanno, and thank you everyone for joining us. And a shout out